Yeah. Moses had a staff, David had a stone. The disciples changed the world, and they started out alone. You don't need perfection, you just need surrender. God can use a willing heart to change the world forever.
Hey, welcome to the Watch Missions Live podcast. Today, I have Sarah, and she is the operations and development manager for an organization called Azmera. They do 5 live retreats a year for global workers and kingdom-minded women to help them stay healthy and on the field. Sarah, thanks for coming in, giving us some time. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, Aaron, good to see you. I'm Sarah. I grew up in Kansas, and when I was 14, God called me to a mission trip to the Philippines, and that's when he called me to be a missionary, and I have spent a lot of my time on the field since then.
Yeah, a lot of time. Why don't you give us a few of the places you've been? Because I always like hearing them, and it's fun for everybody else to just kind of know. So just the high-level view of some of the places you did or where went and what you were doing there.
Well, after that Philippines trip, when I was 17, I went to Zimbabwe, Africa, and we drove Suzuki 125s around. And that's kind of where I got my love for motorcycles and how you and I became friends in high school. And you taught me how to drive motorcycle and helped me get my motorcycle license in the US. And so that's how we've been friends forever.
Yep.
But I've also worked with Mercy Ships. I've worked with SCORE International in Dominican Republic in Costa Rica. I went to Bible school at Word of Life in Schroon Lake, New York, but also in Spanish in Argentina for 3 years. I've also served in Ecuador with World Venture.
Cool. Yeah, we've known each other for a long time. Graduated high school. I graduated 2001. I know you were a year or two ahead of me, but we've been at it for a while. I'm 43
Yep.
now. So yeah, we've been at it for a while. But that's
Yep.
good. I always tell people, I'm like, I knew you were going to be a missionary as soon as you went through school. It's like, oh, yep, Sarah, she's going to be definitely just out and gone. Sure enough, you
Yeah.
were.
I tried to go to college. You know, I had a basketball scholarship. That was my dream, to go to college on a basketball scholarship. But after a semester, God was just like, if you leave this, I have something that is beyond what you could ask or imagine. That verse really came to light during Christmas vacation from school. And I talked to the Dean of Women in January, and I just asked her all these questions about, I feel like God's leading me out of school. What do you think? And she walked it through with me, and she called my parents. She was like, I think you can trust the God that is within your daughter. And she has a strong relationship with him, and he's leading her to something else. And so I left college without knowing where God wanted me. But within 2 weeks, I was on a ship in El Salvador working with Mercy Ships. And it's kind of a lot has happened since then, but it was beyond what I could ever ask or imagine. I remember I was going through the Panama Canal with Mercy Ships, and it's like a whole day that you have to go through the canal. It's not as small as what we Americans think.
Right.
And I was working on the deck crew then, and you have to steer the ship and stuff. And the captain comes on the bridge, and he is not always there. Like the first or the third captain usually is there, but the captain came on the bridge, and he was like, we're going to change course. And there's this whole procedure that you have to learn. Like he says the command, then you have to repeat it. And then after you've done it, you have to repeat it to him so he knows that you did it correctly. And so he's starting to telling me this change of course. And I get this giggle in the belly of my stomach. And I controlled it, Aaron. I would behave. But in my mind, I was thinking, how in the world, as a girl from Kansas, we don't have lakes barely where we're at in Western Kansas. How in the world am I steering the ship, getting orders from a captain, and there's 300 people sleeping on the ship? This is beyond what I could ask or imagine. And I love adventure. I love crazy stuff. And God gave that to me. And there's been other of my stuff that life that's been hard, and hopefully we'll get to some of that. But God has given me an amazing life because I've said yes to whatever crazy adventure He decides to ask me to do.
Yep, yep. And I've had this conversation so many times, but I always like to look at this and say, if this is the only episode that anybody ever listens to, I want to make sure I go over it again. You know, when I was 14, I loved God and motorcycles. I went to my first race. I'm like, that's why I love God and motorcycles. I'm supposed to be here. The sport was the thing for me, right? But then yours was the opposite. You had the sport, you had the scholarship to lead to the college where most people are like, okay, this is what life's about. College, good job, retirement, right? And you felt like you need to lay it down because there was more out there that God was calling you to. And so
Yeah.
the reason I bring this up, right, is because one of the things we want to point out is all the different ways that you can get into missions work. Everything that missions work is and what it can be and what you're called to, it's different from person to person. We can't say college is the thing and then missions. We can't say you don't need college, go into missions. We can't say the sport is bad because it's on the weekends, you need to be in church. We can't say the sport is the thing that you need to be doing. It all comes down to, are you seeking God? Do you have a heart for God? And are you discerning that and doing what God's called you to do? Because it's going to be different from
Yeah.
each person. And that's why I love this. There's so many different stories of the way people got into it, stayed into it, things they got to do. And it's so fun for me to see all the different ways that God is moving people around, you know, because one person has a story of, I had to give up the sport. The next person's like, the sport was the thing.
Right.
And
Yeah.
vice versa.
And God gave me the sport again, because, like I said, when I was working in Costa Rica in sports ministry, like I got to play Division 1 women's basketball with this team. I say play, but I mean sit on the bench because they were so good. Like the other post, she was from Panama. She was like built like a house and she was unmovable. And I got to give her like 30-second breaks now and then. And we did win the national title that year. Like it was awesome to
Nice.
be a part of that. But I had these women over to my house and just fed them spaghetti and just told them my story about, the things that I was a widow at that time. And they were like, how are you in
Mhm.
Costa Rica with your 2 kids? Like, what are you doing here? Like, and
Why
just
are
get
you
to
here?
share my testimony with them and
Mhm.
God's faithfulness and bringing that through that time when my husband passed away suddenly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, God gave me sports in many different ways.
Yep. It's funny because, it's like he's redeeming it. He's bringing it back and giving it back to you.
Yeah.
So let's talk. Obviously, me and you could kick stories around all
Oh
day
yeah.
long. And where there's so many missions you've been on that I would love to tell so many different stories. So maybe there'll be 5 or 6 or 12 other podcast episodes telling God stories from all those. But today, we're going to talk about Azmera. So tell us a little bit about that. Where are you at now? What are you doing? And tell us kind of what they do. Basically, just tell us about it first.
Yeah, Azmera does 5 or 6, we call them Haven retreats a year, and we go to every region of the world every other year. So like Africa and Europe switch years, Asia and Europe, or I don't know, Central and South America. So we go to where the global workers are at. And we put on a 3-night, 4-day retreat for them with a speaker. We bring counselors. We have a pedicure station where we're literally washing their feet. And it's all about fellowship. We bring gifts for them. We bring Trader Joe chocolate because women heal through chocolate, Aaron. Like,
I've heard.
but we just want them to receive and spend time with the Lord and just take perspective on the season of life that they've been in. We get a lot of women from war-torn countries, and they just want to get away from the bombing and the political turmoil. Like, so we just have a haven space for them to unpack these things, and the counselors unpack more serious things. So that's kind of and like in between retreats, we have Azmera Community Tuesdays. It's a Zoom for global worker women that they can come to. We're also creating a new Azmera like one-on-one counseling time or mentorship or spiritual direction or prayer, or so we want to be able to support the global workers in between the retreats as well with different resources. So lots of
That's
things
awesome.
going on.
That's awesome. Well, it's definitely needed because, you've been on the field, I've been on the field, completely get it. We need that disconnect. And a lot of times people doing the missions or, just like said, global workers doing all sorts of different things around the world, a lot of times we feel like we can't take those,
Yeah.
or our donors won't like us doing that. I remember a donor telling me once, when I give to a missionary, I don't want to see them golfing. And I remember just thinking, really? Like they live in the worst conditions all year round and you don't want them to take a vacation? That's silly. So it's like, we definitely need to pour into people. So I love that you guys are creating that space. So you
Yeah,
say global.
I think that that church, like maybe US church mindset more than anybody, but they think, oh, missionaries, they've been trained to like go at it alone and like they're fine, like they're spiritual enough that they don't need me and there's
Right.
nothing that I could do to really encourage them. But those global workers, they feel alone. They feel
Mm-hmm.
isolated. They feel broken. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can like we have the global workers like write thank you cards and evaluations after the retreat, and like they kind of do a before and after, and like the verbiage that they use coming in is so desperate, so dry, so broken. And then like I just pulled a sheet out of my bag, but like one lady, she says, I've been serving 10 years in Lebanon and the recent political turmoil of the region has wrecked me. And then after the retreat, she writes, attending this retreat this weekend has allowed me to have some space to commune with our God, our good Father, and to receive his love in tangible ways. Thank you for making this possible.
Yeah.
So I could go through all 40 women and it's like the verbiage
Yep.
drastically changes from
Oh, yeah.
before and after. And people don't know that global workers are suffering so much,
Yeah.
and we need to be good stewards of who we have in the
Mm-hmm.
field, in the harvest, because not just because we love them, but also because we need to be good stewards of our finances as a
Mm-hmm.
church, because as a global church, it takes tens of thousands of dollars to get a missionary family on the field. If we burn them out within a few years and we have to pull them off, more money, and to get
Yeah.
another family, it's like,
Yeah.
let's not have it be a rotating door. Let's take
Yeah.
care of who we have there because we love them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and it's so true. I mean, every time we left and went somewhere, we felt like we were just forgotten and left out there.
Yeah. Out
You
of sight,
know,
out of mind. It is.
yeah. And part of that, I mean, it's just that, right? When you move or you change jobs, it's like your friends group change. As soon as you leave town, it's like, well, new friends in a new city and the old ones just kind of fade away. So there is a lot of that, right? And I mean, our goal to multiply missions is to help teach the givers and goers how to actually be a part of what's going on and work together better to where they
And that's our
understand, hey, I'm
second
an
tagline.
actual, what's that?
That's our second tagline, Aaron, is to help global senders stay engaged. And so
Yep.
we also take 15 to 20 um, American women with us overseas. And
Hmm.
as they are listening to the stories, praying with them, crying with them, laughing with them, giving them a pedicure, like they go home, they're going to pray for missionaries differently because
Yeah.
they have the WhatsApp number and they're asking them
Hmm.
like, "Hey, what happened to that prayer request that we were praying about? Like what happened with your son? What happened with your ministry? What's going on in your marriage?" Like they're engaged and
Yeah.
they're walking with them in real things that are going on in the
Oh, yeah.
global worker's life. Like that's what we need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree. And I know me and you are going to do another, for if you guys like kind of listening to Sarah and talking about, more of the issues in the mission space, we're actually going to do a live at some point this year. And we're
Yeah.
going to go through just kind of all the struggles that are in the field, right? Because primarily
Yeah.
that's what she's doing right now. And I experienced a lot of that, my wife and I, and that's what Watch Missions Live is as well, which is why we wanted to get back together with Sarah and Azmera and what they're doing and partner, to help multiply that because it's needed so much. We're going to go through all of the problems and struggles in the field and just kind of what happens in the mission space, because if you don't know about it, you don't pray about it. Right. And like you said, we have our own jobs, our own work, our own school. We go the same way all the time. We hang around with the same people and it's out of sight, out of mind. And so we're actually, going to bring more light to that and be able to go deeper into that on on another live or another episode. But how did you get connected with Azmera now? Because obviously you've been a lot of different places, done a lot of different organizations, things like that. How'd you get connected with Azmera and what you're doing now?
So when I was serving in Ecuador, one of my field friends, she said, "Hey, come to Quito with us. This group, Azmera, is going to have a Haven retreat." And so I went, and it was like I was having some issues in my marriage, and I didn't have a safe place to talk about it because as a missionary, there's a lot of guilt and shame that
Mm-hmm.
you don't have perfect kids or a perfect marriage. And there's fear to tell your mission organization because you don't want them to overreact and like pull you off the field.
Right.
And like the higher ups are making decisions that you're not really okay with. And, you don't want to tell your church because they're supporting you. What if they pull their support or, like, and you don't want to tell your, like you don't feel
Yeah.
safe to tell
Yeah.
people, And so with Azmera, like, I could see like they don't know my people. They don't know
Mm-hmm.
my organization. They don't like this is all sacred
Yeah.
space here. It's safe. And so I was able to start asking questions that I had in my marriage and start telling the truth out loud to someone else. And
Right.
when I heard myself say it, then it was like true. And I had to start thinking about what needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then a few years after that, I went to another one in Cartagena. And so I had gone to an Azmera retreat twice as an
Gotcha.
attendee, as a global worker, and needing these places and
Okay.
needing these women. And, I connected with other women on the field and they told me, oh, I use this resource and this resource. And so I was able to like figure out things, as a new person in Ecuador too. They were like, "Oh, go here," and this person, so connecting with other global workers in country or surrounding countries. So, when God brought me off the field, I had called my agency and I said, "Hey, this marriage, something's going on. I don't know what it is. I have done everything for 10 years. I need to come and get help." And so my organization brought me and my teenagers off the field and just getting counseling and a lot of research on my own, figuring out that I'm in a emotionally abusive marriage, a spiritually abusive marriage with a narcissistic man, and God led me to ask him for a divorce because he could not understand what he was doing. And there's a lot behind that, and I'm
Yeah,
very
of
open
course.
to go into that at some point. But so the divorce happened, and I was like really upset with God. It's like, God, I've tried to be a missionary for you. It was all about me.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
tried to serve you. I've tried to live on the field. Like I've sacrificed all this, and God was and I was just like pouting. I was like, I'm not going to do it anymore. I've tried.
Yeah.
You don't make it work out.
Right.
And my son was on a mission trip to Iceland that year, and I watched the live stream of the sermons in the evening. And it's the same organization that God called me to be a missionary when I was 14. And the guy was talking about, is God calling you to be a missionary when you're older as your vocation? And is he and I felt the same burning passion, Aaron. Like I wanted to jump through the screen and like sign that commitment paper again. And I was like, God, I can't get away from being a missionary. Like this is who you've created me to be. But how can I do that from Tulsa? Like I
Yeah.
need to live here. My kids need to get through high school. I need to heal. Like this doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. How can I do both? And God just put in my mind, like, call Christina.
Mm-hmm.
She's the director of Azmera. And I called Christina and
Okay.
she's like, I've been praying for 5 years for an assistant. And I started out as the executive assistant, and that has morphed into this operation and development manager. Just as I see my skills and the God-given abilities, and I just love my work with Azmera, but it was definitely something from the Lord that he prepared for me before I even knew that I needed it.
Right. Absolutely. There's two things I want to pull out of that real quick because my goal here is always to tell people all the different ways they can get into missions and tell the truth behind it, right?
And you don't
So
have to be perfect to do it.
exactly. That's part of that's the second thing I want to bring in.
Okay,
First
okay.
thing though, you keep saying global workers, Azmera is for global workers. Who are the people? What is a global worker? So that if people are listening and they're having these issues, they know that you're the person or you're the organization that's for them. Because as Watch Missions Live, we want to be that for you. But I think you guys are a little more specific and niche down to the person. So tell us the person because we want to connect you or help you guys find each other.
Yeah, we work with women that are in overseas service to the Lord. It might be like an expat. An expat is like someone that used to live in the United States and they're an expatriate. So now they're just living overseas, but they might have a business or a job or just have retired there.
Hmm.
But if they are reaching out to their community and they are kingdom minded, we also invite them. It might be a national, so like a pastor's wife that's Zimbabwean, and they're serving in Zimbabwe, like she is in full-time ministry, and we would
Right.
invite her. Somebody that works with an NGO, a military wife,
Hmm.
embassy workers, anybody that's kingdom minded women.
Okay. Cool. So if you are a kingdom minded woman and you're struggling with anything like that, that's why they exist, is to help support you and to give you that safe space to be able to breathe and get back to who God's created you to be. Is that right?
Yeah. It's just respite, really. Like it's called
Yeah.
member care. Because sometimes the women come in and they're like, I didn't even know I needed this.
Right.
Like, once you step back and start receiving, you're like, ooh, I was a lot tired than what I thought I was.
Wow. I actually can let go. Wow. I'm beat.
Right? Yeah.
I'm really tired. So the second thing there, you had kind of mentioned, and I know we'll talk about it more, but you kind of mentioned, your divorce, but that was the second, right? So you want to tell
Second
us a
marriage.
little bit, just so people know that you're not just saying stuff, right? But you've actually
Right.
been through stuff. You've done lots of missions and everything else, and you've been a global worker, and then you've been through some of
Yeah.
these things. So go ahead and share kind of the one before that and what happened, more of the story. And that way people just have an idea of all the things that you've been through and why this is such a passion on your heart to speak to it and help ladies work
Yeah.
through this.
So my first husband, Hugo, he was from El Salvador and he was a gifted worship leader and just huge youth leader type guy, very uh, outspoken, and people just really adored him, and he adored me. Like we had a wonderful marriage, and it was so much fun to serve the Lord together as best friends. Um, but he went to go play basketball, and he was just changing his shoes from his street shoes to his basketball shoes. You know how you use different shoes
Yeah.
for on the court, and he would always take off his rings and put them in his street shoes, and I can visualize his whole pregame, procedure, and so, but anyways, my mom's boss, because it was just a pickup game, my mom's boss was there, um, and he told me later, his name's Jerry, he said, "Sarah, I was talking with Hugo, he was sitting, changing his shoes, and I looked away." And he was talking about his family and how much he loved his new baby girl, because Layla was 2.5 months old at this point, and um, Jerry said, I looked away, and when I looked back, he was having a grand mal seizure. And they life flighted him to Wichita. And long story short, um, they did a CAT scan, and they said, no, Sarah, it's a major brain aneurysm in his brainstem. Like his body won't even survive on machines. Like, and the neurologist told me, Sarah, this could have happened in front of me in the hospital, and I could not have saved him. God decides to take you off the face of the earth, and this is how he does it. And that was a huge grace from the Lord. It sounds weird to say, but that's grace from the Lord, because there's no one for me to argue with but God. There's no drunk
Yeah.
driver. There's nothing stupid
Right.
that he did. Like, wasn't an accident, nothing. Like, it was God. And I'm not one to argue with God. I really, God tells me something, and as much as possible, I say, yes, Lord. And so God entrusted this hard story to me. And on the way home from the hospital, I called the director of our mission organization at that time, who's also in glory now. But I said, Ron, God called me to missions. when I was 14, and it didn't depend on if I was married or not, and I don't know how or when, but I will come back to the field. And Ron was like, "We got you. Let's do it." And within 2 months, my parents helped me fly the kids back to Dominican Republic, and I started working with an anti-prostitution ministry called Lily House. And I lived in a missionary community. I had a babysitter gal. Like, it was a perfect setup, even for healing while I was doing ministry. Like, sometimes it's really messy, and you're not in a good place, and you're
Yeah.
healing from losing your husband. Like, he was 29.
Yeah.
This is not supposed to happen. Very healthy guy. Um, but God led me to do ministry, and it was a platform for me to stand on in front of these women on the street and say, I have lived through something hard,
Yeah.
but
Hmm.
God is truth. God is good no matter what. And I
Yeah.
felt like I had something that gave my life validity, maybe, because these women, they were like, they looked at me differently, and they listened more closely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Been through a lot. It definitely, all the stories I say all the stories because it's like I see them that way too. Like, these are stories. God's given us stories to help other people. Everything we've been through is to help other people.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting. Like, now that's what you're doing, is creating spaces to help people go through some of the
Yeah.
stuff you went through.
And that's why
And
I wanted to work with Azmera, because I want to be the voice of change, the voice of clarity, and go to these women that are global workers and say, hey, I've been you. I've hid before in the guilt and the shame, but this is a safe place. Like, even if something feels off in your marriage and you can't really put your finger on it, like, let's talk about it. Because maybe as an outside source, like, we can find the resources that you need so that you can be thriving in your marriage and as global workers overseas. I want, and when I was in the country of Georgia in October, I was leading a connection circle time that we sit with the same ladies for the same 4 days. So we really go deep together. But I like to be the first one to share, because I share about losing my first husband. I share
Mhm.
about my divorce. I share about um, losing babies. I've had 4 miscarriages. Um, God has given me a ministry of a life of suffering, and I haven't always wanted that story until uh Bali, which was last year in February. I was at a Haven retreat, and God just told me, Sarah, you would go to Africa for me and live in a mud hut, but you will not hold this story for me. I need you to be a good steward of sharing this story. And
Mhm.
I was just like, okay, Lord, I heard that loud and clear.
Right.
And so, as much as I can, I share my story of pain, of just, I never thought divorce would be a part of my story. Like,
Right.
I grew up very conservative Baptist. Like, that's not a word that exists in,
Yeah.
verbiage, and, that's never for you. And God had to bring new, biblical theology to say, like,
Mhm.
yeah, but there's also line when that person continues to sin against you, and it's destroying you as an image bearer that
Yeah.
I went to the cross to die for.
Mhm.
That's what I want saved in your kids that are being ruined for the name of Christ because of this hypocrisy in the marriage, and what they were being taught on Sunday from their pastor dad,
Yeah.
stepdad, but they called him dad, and what's
Yeah.
being done at home to them.
Yeah.
And to have that messiness of saying, like, this is God's protection from me. Now I have a divorce, you know, on the name of Sarah. M- God also showed me that I'm just like everybody else. I am nothing special. I had myself,
Mhm.
you say people put, global workers up on pedestals. I had myself up on a pedestal, Aaron. Like, I
Right.
thought it was all that. And God was like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Like,
It's a
you
dangerous
are
place
just
to
as
be because
flawed
we're
as
about to get knocked down.
everyone else.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's
Yeah.
really helped me to love the cross of Christ so much more because I need his grace.
Yeah. Absolutely. We all do. It's so easy to get into that too. Be like, "Oh, I'm doing all these things. It's so great." It's like, no.
Yeah.
As soon as I start hearing myself say anything like that, I'm like, "Oh no, I'm about to get knocked down.
Oh,
I need
and
to get myself back where I need to be."
so I was telling you, I got distracted, but I was telling you in the country of Georgia, when I
Mhm.
shared this mess of my life, um, so I in the connection circle, I share first, all of this that's gone on. And then the gal next to me, she was like, I wasn't gonna share this, but because you shared so honestly, I'm gonna share this that happened to me. And she went on to talk about that she was in Ukraine. She had been displaced into another country during the war, and she had a physical abuse assault happen to her. And she had only shared it with the very necessary people in her organization, but she hadn't told her family, she hadn't told her friends. And this was the first like real time that she was able to share it out loud to other people. And God was able to use that. When you get put it in
Mhm.
the light, Satan loses a foothold of that darkness that he likes when we keep things to ourselves. And then
Yeah.
the next lady went on to say, I looked at the booklet from the retreat and I see all of you volunteers and, your bios are here. And I just assumed everybody was happily married. And I was like, what's wrong with me? She had just broken up with a boyfriend.
Yeah.
And she's like, "What's wrong with me?" Like, "Everybody else has it together." And she's like, "But because you shared your story, I wanna tell you about this breakup that I just went through and the hardship that I'm going on, trying to let him go, but I know God's telling me no."
Yeah.
And we met together. It was so cool because, like, we would do, like, breakfasts together and lunches together, and that's not normal, but we just wanted to hear more, but we were going so deep together
Mhm.
because of the mess and the vulnerability and the transparency and the story of suffering that God has given to me.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
see how God is redeeming my story again and again and again and again as I share it, and God gets the
Mhm.
glory.
Yep. Well, and it's so good for people to hear it too, because like you said, we have a tendency to look at the brochure or the Instagram or the Facebook or the YouTube and think everything's all wonderful with everybody else. But if
Yep.
God's called you to something, then like you are not too messed up. There is nothing that's messed up about you that isn't messed up with everybody else.
Yeah.
Everybody's got something they're working through. And if God's called you to something, then lean into it. Give it to God and let Him take that story, share that story, and just live that out because you will reach more people being authentic, real, and sharing stories than you will by trying to put on that facade, you know? And
Yeah.
there are some ministries and some denominations that say you can't go into missions if you've been divorced. My
Yeah.
question was always, well, if God told me to and you're telling me not to, I feel like I need to. Because,
Right.
when it comes to God or you, I don't understand.
Right.
But if that's all if you've been born and raised in that denomination or those are the only voices you have around you, it's really hard to come through that. And
Yeah.
and that's something that we're wanting to provide. Same thing you guys are doing. It's like we want to provide that space where if you don't have those voices, then reach out to us. Reach out to Sarah with Azmera and everything. We'll have the links to connect with everything they have going on in the show notes as always, so you guys can connect directly with her. We want to be a catalyst to reunify the body worldwide, but let's say you're a guy listening and that's not exactly your group, then reach out to us. Put it in the comments because we want to help you develop what God's called you to and take your story and turn that into a ministry that God has for you. Or partner you with somebody who can and help you
Yeah.
find those resources. So we've already talked a lot about God stuff and seeing God come through, but I always like to wrap up. Tell me a God story that people would otherwise never hear unless they run into you. And if it's kind of expanding on something you've already done, that's okay. But, or come up with another one.
Um, Man, so many different ones that I could think of God redeeming my story. Like, um, I shared in Georgia, but again, when I was in Bali, um, so at that time I was a retreat specialist, and a retreat specialist does all of the behind the scenes, pre-retreat, during the retreat, and a little bit after the retreat. So I have a lot of things to do during a retreat when I'm a retreat specialist. And so by the end, I'm exhausted. And so we did our closing song, closing prayer, and we go to lunch, and I was just like, okay, I'm done. Whew, I'm done. And just enjoying the after, like relief off my, and I go to lunch, and I'm the last one there, so I just sit down the last spot that I find. And this little Filipino lady's next to me, and I had kind of met her, and we get to talking, and I have no idea how it came up about my marriage, and the narcissism and the emotional abuse. And so I'm sharing all of this like very honestly and open with her. And she kind of like leans over to me, and like we end up basically like ear to ear, very close and intimate conversation. And she said, Sarah, like, I didn't think I could tell anyone here, but my husband abuses me. And he talks down to me, and he yells at me, and he calls me names, and I can't tell my mission organization. And I didn't think anyone here would understand. I thought they would tell me to pray more and to submit more to him. And I feel safe to tell you. And this was the last thing I needed to lay down before I left. And I just thank you, God, for using my mess to allow this woman to lay this burden down. And I have kept in touch with her in WhatsApp and just encourage her and listen to her, but that's God's story with her, where that goes. And just trying to get her the right resources and the right help, and to work through that guilt and shame of like not telling her org or not sharing with the right people. And it's really hard because there's a lot of Christian dynamics in that, but also cultural dynamics in that as well. It's very
Yeah.
complicated. But just that moment of sisterhood together, and being able to encourage her and hug on her and love her in that way, where she just felt understood instead of judged, and that you just have to be more Christian and pray harder.
Yeah. That's old school. Just pray harder.
Yeah.
There's a little more to it. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I love how God continues to just use people and use stories. It's never how we think it's going to be. I can't tell you how many times we went to do something and we did not do what we thought we were going to be doing.
Yeah.
But every single time it created a story that since then has been used to lead somebody to something else, or to give somebody the courage to stand up for something else. And in the moment, it's so frustrating because you're like, I thought I was here to do this. Why are we not? And now I refer to it as put together yet fully flexible. It's like, I'm put together. We know what we're doing, but God could change it any time and we're good to go.
Yeah.
It's like, because it's going to be a story. So, well, thanks for taking the time to come in here and share your stories and talk about what you're doing and how God's using you. And I've just enjoyed catching up as always.
Yep. It's awesome. Thanks for the invite. And look forward to sharing more with you.
Awesome. Well, we will do another episode getting into more of the struggles behind missions, but that's it for today. So thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for listening. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Bye.
Yeah. Moses had a staff, David had a stone. The disciples changed the world.